Hello and welcome to the Embracing the Mystery podcast, hosted by yours truly, Danny Rem. This is a podcast where we have expansive conversations around living an empowered and embodied soul-led life, expanding your consciousness and belief systems, what it means to fully embrace the mystery of life that we are all living, and so much more. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave a rating or review wherever you listen. Share it on your social media platforms, like and subscribe. Thank you for being here and enjoy. Hello, beautiful human beings, and welcome to the Embracing the Mystery podcast. In this episode, I interviewed my dear sister, Shakina, who has gone to great depths within her own life, exploring what it means to balance the internal masculine and feminine energies that we all carry within. In this episode, she shares with us her personal journey of this exploration, the realizations that she has had along the way, and how balancing these energies can support us in our lives and in our relationships with others. We also talk about self-love, integrating the shadow, and activating our creatorship, which is our ability to direct our life force energy to create and serve others in our lives, and how to do this in an integral way. In this episode, words such as God, Creator, Source, Spirit, and the Divine are used. Please know that these are all terms used to describe the higher power and/or force of unconditional love that makes up the fabric of the universe and connects us to all things. Welcome, Shakina, to Embracing the Mystery podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today. And
Mm.
Shakina is a dear sister of mine. She is a dancer, she's an incredible musician, a dear friend, and she's also written a book called Two Yang Love Yin, and that's something we're going to be dropping in about today.
Thanks, Danny. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to, yeah, share our spirits in this way and for you actualizing, your gifts and holding the space in this container and just all the work that you do to bring healing in our collective and just the way that our sisterhood has been such a powerful anchor point for me, and really just been so nourishing in so many ways and so healing and feeling more and more safety and being in counselship with other really strong, empowered, and embodied women is just so necessary and vital for, yeah, all of our journeys as we rise. And so I'm just so grateful to have such a beautiful relationship here and that we get to take what comes through for us and share that with people in a good way. And just praying that, yeah, this time that we're able to connect, we can bring in the codes. Bring in the codes.
We're bringing in the codes today.
Bring in the codes.
Oh, thank you, Shakina. Yeah, I'm so grateful for our sisterhood as well. It's been such a beautiful support for me throughout my journey. And yeah, I feel like we've gone through so much together and alchemized so much in our own journeys. And I would love to talk about that today. And I want to ask you about first your personal journey exploring, balancing, integrating, embodying, and expressing these two aspects of self of the divine masculine and divine feminine. And I know this is something you've written a book about. This is something I just see so clearly expressed in your being, in the way that you dress, you move, you are. And yeah, please
Mm.
share your journey on that because I feel like at this time that's really something that is needing to be integrated to the collective of humanity.
Mm. Yeah, okay. This is a big one. So just praying that I can do my best to keep it keep it contained with that masculine energy. But also let it flower in its feminine form. Yeah, so let's go into that just briefly here of like what is, from my perspective that I'm going to speak from, understood as the feminine and what is understood as the masculine principle. I talk a little bit about this in the beginning of my book. That for me, just some elements of the feminine, just being free flowing, motion oriented energy that is, yeah, constantly in motion, constantly creating, giving life. It's very nourishing, it's very warm. You think Mother Earth, I feel like creation itself is just this very life giving, pulsing energy of the feminine. And that energy needs structure, and it needs to be held by the masculine principle. And all of creation is held in father sky, and so that's kind of an association I make with the masculine pole, the masculine principle. And it's a bit more linear, it's a bit more driven, it's a bit more sharp, I think, for the feminine in spirals, and for the masculine, I think, more in angles.
Mm.
Well, that definitely translates through some of my dance and my prayer. um, so yeah, I think that there's a lot of rewiring happening in the collective of like, what even are these energies? And it's interesting because, and I speak to this in the book as well, that there's an exploration of these energies, but with this ultimate intention to come and bring them into merging, and bring them into union, and bring them into a space of solidarity. And so that they're always simultaneously coexisting as one, and that they're not staying fragmented in these poles. And we can dance along that spectrum to come to know ourselves in these extremities. But I ultimately feel like the goal for me at this point has been to just live in this space of balance, and my cultivation of either extremely feminine parts of myself, or extremely feminine energies, and then extremely masculine energies, has really been to just show me and to teach me what is most native to my own being, and like what feels best in my body. And also to be able to be flexible and malleable and adaptable enough to interact with as much of creation as possible, to be able to be what I need to be to fit with any aspect of creation, whatever pole that it's in, but to also know, again, what is going to be best for me. And at this point, I've swung very deep onto both ends of the spectrum, literally living part of my life like self-identifying as a boy. On some days, I would get myself dressed, and I would dress like a boy, and I would go out, and I would very like consciously put on, just this masculine energy, and live in that, and be super productive those days, and do things that just felt really um, yang, really like a lot of fire, a lot of energy, a lot of productivity, a lot of linear decision making, more analytical mindset, interacting, dating feminine energies, weaving with them, and like really sitting in that masculine space of what is it to hold the heart of the feminine. And that was really interesting experience for me. It gave me so much perspective on the masculine, and what the masculine experiences in relationship with us, and what the masculine is here holding on the planet at this time. I got to go into that without having to mess with my, anatomical biology, without having to mess with my physical body. Like, I was able to enter into that space spiritually, knowing that I have a very androgynous spirit. The Shekinah is actually an androgynous spirit. A lot of people associate it with being the feminine principle of the divine, but it's actually both. And it is the dwelling place of God, but it's both of those energies in union. And so, with that being said, spiritually, there's this fluidity and this ability to flow. And I do feel also like biologically, physically, I am like made up of a lot of yang energy, but ultimately what I'm coming to as my truth, especially in relationship with the masculine, knowing that I want to have a family one day, and that I want to be in relationship with a male bodied person and have that happen very organically, um, is that I do prefer to be with a predominantly masculine energy in relationship like that, so that I can predominantly stay seated in my feminine pole. And that feminine pole for me looks like being in this effortless radiance, like being in this magnetic energy, like being in this oracular energy that is deeply devoted and connected to the divine. And that's able to, in my communion with the earth mother, with my womb pressed on the planet, in my communion with the waters, in my communion with, I don't want to get too heady here, but yeah, sometimes with the galactics and galactic confederations, and some more astral energies, that I'm able to really bring in the wisdom of the feminine that I need to be able to channel through my creation, and knowing that my potency is going to be increased and accelerated if I'm being held strong by a masculine energy that can really hold the full spectrum of my feminine energy in a space of just loving witness. One of the definitions I love for the masculine and feminine, that's very simple in its essence, is as the feminine, I am pure love. And as the masculine, he is pure consciousness. And
Mm.
so to be held by a man that's rock steady in his consciousness, where he's not projecting judgments, he's not projecting fears, he's not getting pulled into my emotions with me. He's just holding this space of neutrality, this equanimous space. And then I'm able to just be everything that I need to be. And I know that I'm being held in this, yeah, just like this loving gaze, this loving witness. So that's kind of the ideal seat for me in relationship. And that comes from a lot of the exploration that I've done, like I've said, with my own energies, with different embodiments I've played with, and being in different types of relational dynamics. So it's benefited me in that, and ultimately taken me home to this place of rebalancing. And I'm still very much every day uncovering more of what the true feminine is to me, and defining that for myself, because I think that that's a very personal journey. And I think that it can be dangerous to get too deep into these dogmatics right now that are being preached as these principles of polarity and of masculine and feminine, because when we too deeply attach to them, then there's not just, like I said, this unification or this merging that needs to happen.
Mm. Wow, thank you for sharing all of that. I love exploring this balance of the masculine and the feminine energies within and how they express themselves, and also what we look for externally. And yeah, I'm curious about your perspective on this because recently I had an experience of really getting clear on what I was calling in a man. And it sounds like you've kind of like identified that within yourself, like what is supportive for your energy. And when I was identifying these things, I was also recognizing, oh, if I'm calling this in with a person, this is also something that I need to integrate more deeply into my own divine masculine. And I
Mm.
wonder if you've had that kind of experience, or like how getting really clear on what's good for you has also facilitated you just like look at deeper things within like your own energies.
Mm. Yeah. So again, with this, I'll just relate it back to something I just spoke on, which is sometimes, the exploration of these things is not for the end goal to get stuck in that way of being, but it's just really to deepen our understanding of the collective web and of the collective psyche. Or for me, like I said, a lot of diving into such a deep exploration of the masculine that I actually at times had to be like identified with that as like my whole being, to really understand the levels of responsibility that the masculine is being called into at this time in the collective, and what they're having to hold for the feminine in certain ways, to the best of my ability, obviously acknowledging the fact that I'm not biologically or anatomically wired to be a male-bodied person, but best of my ability going into those energies. It was not for me to just stay there. And so, yes, do I think that it's hugely valuable for us to take the time to embody these things within ourselves so that we can call it in? Because a lot of times people will say, the person that you're with is a reflection of you and your love for yourself, or what you've accessed, the depth of love you've
Mhm.
accessed within your own being. But now, simultaneously, there's the concept of polarity. And so it's like, and this is where I think we're having to rewire again and rebalance again as a collective. I think we moved from such this state of codependency in a lot of ways, where these strict roles were being played out by men and by women in the previous generations, and
Mhm.
then we moved into the space of hyper independence. And this is something that is talked about briefly in Ways of the Superior Man, um, where he says to the best of my ability, I'll translate how I interpreted what was said in that book, of like these three stages of relating being codependence, and then you move into hyper independence, and then the last stage, and the most harmonious stage, is interdependence. And so it's like activating these things within yourself, but not to stay stuck in that liminal space of hyper independence where I need to be everything for myself. Because if you're so everything for yourself, where can somebody come in and complement you? So it's like, yes, I'm going to activate my providership. I'm going to activate my protectress. I'm going to activate these keynotes of the masculine. I'm going to activate full presence with myself and hold myself and my creation and my worthiness, because I'm setting the tone as the feminine for my relationship and as a creator for my relationship. But then if a man can come in and hold that end of the spectrum, if we are coming into a unified space of being and they can really hold their end of the spectrum down, it's in my best interest to go deeper into my native essence and being, to let go a little bit of having to be that role in the relationship. And so that is very different than the codependent element, of needing that person to be that role. It's like, no, I've already achieved and accessed that. And I know that I can give myself that. I know that I can take care of myself. I know that I know the kind of presence that I give myself. And in that too, we're able to recognize what is our true reflection because we've embodied that. But then to allow somebody to come in and be that for us and be that reflection and open our hearts as the feminine to essentially trust that a man can hold that frequency that we've had to hold for ourselves as we've nurtured ourselves back into spaces of wholeness, but not so much wholeness that there's no room for an energy to come in and be a complement to us. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but I just wanted to speak to, yes, embody that, but not with the rigidity in such a way that, yeah, we don't let people in.
Yeah, that's such an important piece because I feel like if we're really looking to evolve through the integration of these energies and the balancing of these energies, it's really just about a deeper homecoming to that which we already are. And that which we already are, of course, like there is space for connection and love and intimacy in a way that feels really authentic and balanced and, not codependent and not hyper independent. And I think that's the purpose of balancing these energies.
Totally.
Yeah, wanting to be in healthy relationship, not just with a man or a woman. I think a lot of times when we go on this journey of exploring these energies and balancing them within, maybe it initially starts through a relationship or with like looking for someone or calling
Right.
that in, but I feel like truly like it's in all relation to life. And like I've even
Totally.
had to balance so many things just like within my work, like being an entrepreneur, how do I create the structure so that I can show up and let my intuition
Totally.
guide the way? And there's so many prophecies of the balance of the masculine and feminine within humanity, within divine union, but also the divine union within. And I just feel like it's reflected in so many forms and so many elements externally and internally. And so we can be thinking we're doing it for one reason, but I really think that it, from a higher perspective, is for so many reasons on our planet.
Totally, my girl.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. What you just said. The beloved is in all forms and in all things. And ultimately, it's just this ability to relate to the divine. And I do think that's also why I encourage and like why it's been such a huge part of my spiritual journey to embody everything,
Mm.
and really liberate that for myself, really liberate myself in that so that I can connect to God in so many ways and dance with God in so many ways. And yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that actually, because I perceive you as being someone who is, again, like very connected to many different aspects of themselves and embodies them and expresses them really freely and creatively. What would you say to somebody who felt like really blocked in that way or was afraid of, a certain aspect of themselves or, what would you say to them to give them the courage to embody it and express it?
Well, I think it would be person specific and like having to look at what are their resistances around that. Um, I think so much of it boils down to programming and like us just being programmed as women to be a certain type of way that's societally accepted or attractive, and for men as well, and just with how much shaming there is around men expressing their feminine and then being called gay, and just the charge that there is around that. So a part of me would just say, fuck what other people think, man. Like,
Yes.
liberate yourself, just do it for liberation. But also, what inspired me more than just, making it about being a sacred rebel is knowing that the more I've expanded myself, not only have I been able to grow closer to our creator in that, but like I've been able to grow closer to myself as a creator. in
Mm.
that, and merge in that relationship with God, because I've allowed myself to tap into so many more pools of inspiration, and I've allowed myself to tap into so many more really truly rich experiences, of really like becoming one love, exploring all these different types of energies, all these different places in the world that I've had the privilege of traveling to, that I've connected to and merged with, um, all of these different artistic mediums. I mean, the expansion ultimately, like I said, once you traverse polarity and you bring it into a unified state of solidarity, that fractalizes out into infinity. And now you're exploring yourself as this infinite being, as this eternal being, as this cosmic being. And so just the
Yes.
richness and the liberation that comes from being that type of love that can literally relate to anything, because it's completely shattered these boxes of limitations. Like, it's it's the most orgasmic feeling of all time. Honestly. And so I would just say you deserve that. You deserve to feel that orgiastic ecstasy of being in full union and merge with your creatorship, and with creator, and with all of creation. And when you feel, I really think that at the core, at the root of all things that we do as human beings, we're wanting to feel that place of oneness, that touch
Mm.
of God, and then that connectedness to all things. And if we're in that space of wholeness, we're in that space of connectedness, we move very differently in the world, and we're actually not so affected or influenced by what other people might think, or
Mhm.
having to be any one type of way. We're just out here to know thyself. Like, make the intention of your life. I mean, when I made the intention of my life to know my soul truly and to know myself truly, this is when I started to touch true liberation. And then when I look at, even just people that are out in this world as activists, it's like we look at this war that's happening right now, and that it's this cry for liberation. And it's a cry for liberation, especially for the children and for the inner child, on that microcosmic level that's extending out into the macrocosm in this way. And so realizing that this is a hugely empowering, way of achieving liberation within yourself. And if every single person took responsibility for that in their own way, what might then we see, collectively shift.
Yeah, I love that you're speaking to the inner child because I really feel like when we are connected to the inner child, so much creativity pours through because it's like we're in this place of innocence. We're connected to God. Our channel is open. We're in that energy of like flow and play where there's like that lack of judgment, that lack of criticism, that lack of
Yes.
shame, that's
Yes.
programmed into us. And it's like the inner child does not care, Like we just want to
Facts.
create, like the channel
Facts.
is clear and open. It's so, so important to undo that programming and reconnect. Like it's almost like from my own personal experience, like giving my life back to God in a way, or letting myself be like that vessel for source to come through to
Mhm.
create like through my body, whatever's wanting to come through, rather than it being like I'm creating these things, like source is moving me to, ground these energies onto the earth plane in different physical forms and expressions and
Right.
different things. And yeah, there's so many different ways we can do that. And it's just about listening to our own heart and how it wants to move through us.
Amen, my girl. Building that inner communion. Exactly.
Mhm. How has coming into deeper communion with Source and just with your own body and your own channel, like how has that helped you direct your creative energy in a really
Mhm.
healthy way?
Yeah. So, I mean, in our conversations about this too, and just to make this, like, anchor this with the whoever is listening as well, that our, creative energy and our sexual energy are one and the same. And that it's ultimately just this energy that gives life. It's a nourishing energy that gives life. And we've also seen collectively, and for me personally, I'll say that I've expressed that energy, in ways, as the feminine incarnate, sometimes in my pain body that has been manipulative, or just ultimately not that nourishing, not nourishing a sustainable life force circuit. Let's just say that. And I think when we're really connected to creator and our creatorship in that space of whatever we're creating, that's a priority, sustainability. But when we are creating from a lower frequency, there's a depletion of chi that happens. There's a depletion of our sexual energy, our creative energy, and a sort of lustful giving it away to sometimes even an anti-life force agenda. And I feel that being in connection with creator when we're wielding this energy in a good way just offers this sort of, it's like when you're bowling, those little rails on the side, like
Bumpers.
this. Yeah, the bumpers. Yeah, it's like this safety net where it's like you can't go, like what happens when your ball goes outside of those bumpers? It just, it doesn't have an impact. It just goes away and there's your shot. It's just missed. But if
Mm,
it stays in the bumpers, you're going to hit at least one pin. You might get a full strike, and it's like
mm,
consulting with God is like putting bumpers up in your life. It's like staying on that path of that straight and narrow, and keeping the energy contained. And when our energy is contained and guided with direction towards a true north, or guided like an arrow into the heart, into the true heart of creation, and like what that desires to birth, there is an increased level of potency, um, in what we're channeling. And then there's also an increased level of trust that we build with ourselves. And the more trust I believe that we build with ourselves, the more energy we're allowed to wield. I recently heard something about how, God loves us all the same. And there are actually different levels of spiritual power and authority that we allow ourselves, or that creator, the giver of all life, gives to us, or resources that we allow into our lives, or resources that we're given. Um, and I'm really not talking so much in the material as I am in the spiritual. Like for me, I'll just say so many of my spiritual gifts have come more online as a direct result of building up this trust in my communion, in
mm,
my ability to open my channel to receive more of this Shakti power, Shakti energy, this Kundalini life force. It's because I trust that I'm wielding this in a good way as a creatrix, and that I'm not using this energy to be sexually manipulative or distorted, or essentially feed something that's going to destroy me or my chi, or a man's power or his chi, or this planet and what it is here to birth. So it's just to stay in alignment, it's a prayer for alignment, and really tuning into, not only is this going to be of service to me right now, but is this going to be of service to me, all of those that I love, and not just in this moment, but long term. So, this consideration of longevity and sustainability when we're stepping into a space of, okay, I'm going to create something with the preciousness of my life force in this
mm.
moment, or me and this person are going to create a moment together with the preciousness of our life force and birth something into this world, you know, whether that's we're going to make a meal together, or we're going to make an album, or we're going to make a baby. Like to have that field of creativity, or that channel of creativity coded in prayer, wrapped in prayer, and wrapped in prayer for protection and alignment, I feel like can also just spare us like so much karma. And I think that so much of what we're dealing with in the world today is a direct result of just karma we've accumulated from ourselves by not basically like setting up our bases before we go into this
Mm.
world of creatorship, because we are truly so powerful, and what we create has these massive ripple effects. And so asking to be guided, humbly going into that space, knowing, hey, I am the divine, but I am also a human, and I don't want my ways to get in the way. So let's, really be in counselship around what's going to be of service to the most high, and making that the intention of like everything that we're doing being of service to ourselves, the collective, and our loved ones, and to this planet now and forever. Amen.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and also like giving
Mm,
that little example of the prayer that we can hold at the end. And
mm,
yeah, it's so true. It's like really about getting out of our own way and clearing these. I want to use the word distraction because that's kind of what I feel that you're tapping into. Like when you're saying like that alignment and there's like bumpers or there's like a container, it's like free of those
mm,
distractions. It's like the energy is contained. It's not going over here and going over there, but it's like solid and being channeled towards a goal. And I feel like the goal you're speaking to is like, yeah, how can I use my energy to be in service to the collective, to
Mm-hmm.
those that I love? And that's so important. And I think, just with so many things like social media, television, even just like food, like there's so many distractions in our world, that can pull on our energy. And I think we really have to take
Mm-hmm.
responsibility to really anchor into ourselves to direct that energy in a good way.
1000%. And to add to what you just shared, realizing that I'll say for me, and this is where I'm going to really bring in some Christ energy. Like when I tried to take that responsibility on my own and thinking that I had to do it on my own as a human being, I really didn't stand
Mm,
a chance. And I kept watching myself fall into the same addictive habits and behaviors. And I really just do not believe that as a human being, we have enough of a will on our own to overcome the ways of this world, because the human is very much in this world, but then the divine is in this world, but not of this world. And so making sure that we are connecting to that divine principle, that divine counterpart, seeing, and again, this is the merging of the union in a really important way of like, yes, we are, God lives in us, but like we are not God. We are human beings, and we have to remember that we have these ways, and we do need to call not on a higher power that's seated in some chair in the celestial heavens, that has power over us, but realizing that there is a benevolent force of unconditional love that is completely untouchable by the ways of this world and has transcended the ways of this world entirely, and paved a path of light through these denser realms. What happened with Christ's life and his testimony and the resurrection process, that there is a safe path for us to walk if we connect to that energy that can actually help us to overcome and transcend also the denser realms and ways of this world, and that there is a path of salvation ultimately that's been paved. And I really just want to encourage that prayer for people's lives, because I see so many of our brothers and sisters in community like taking back, their sovereignty and taking back this role of creator in their life, but then missing the piece of like humility to admit that, you're not able to do this on your own. And you actually do need to have faith and believe that there's something, yes, greater than you, but that lives
mm,
within you. It's not greater than you, above you, disconnected to you. There is something greater than man, but that resides within man. And that's a very confusing thing to the brain. We've been operating in such an analytical mind and such a mental space for so long collectively, but the shift that we're starting to see right now, and a big part of the rise of the feminine on the planet, is like moving into a more sentient space of being. So it's like,
mhm,
don't try to understand that, what I'm
mhm.
saying, like try to really feel that integration of your divinity and your humanness, and this trust in this ultimately like benevolent force that is all good, all pure, unconditional love, and not project your past or your humanness or your pulls to density onto this beloved creator of ours, because it's so far above all of that, and it's transcended all of that, and we can actually draw strength from that and connect ourselves to that nourishing source pocket, so
Mhm.
long as we believe that we're worthy of that, and that we can humble ourselves and ask for forgiveness to go into that space, and yeah, like really humbly receive that gift.
Yeah, and it's accessible for anybody,
Mm,
like we can all tap into these channels of energy. We can all use our energy in these ways and connect to God. And it's also different for everybody. I mean, some of us
totally.
really resonate with prayer, some meditation, some dance. Like there's so many ways to open these channels and connect to that higher
Mm,
energy. And I think it's just about like tuning in and feeling what that is for you.
totally. Yeah. And really moving from a space of wholeness, because as much as, I've spoken at this point to, feeding what is good and what is nourishing and what is life-giving and what is sustainable, like watching our backs, watching out for the parts of us that are feeding distortion. It's like the good and the bad wolf,
Mm,
watching out the parts of us that are creating for validation or creating from a space of ego or pulling like wanting love not from this benevolent space of because I want to be in an overflowing state of service to somebody, but because I want to extract and get and take energy because I don't feel enough on my own. And so really watching of like what is the frequency that we're in, what is the state that we're in when we're stepping into a space of connection or stepping into a space of creation, and how can we track feeling whole within ourselves, to know that it's there's a Marianne Williamson quote about this, and I don't know it exactly, but I'll again do my best to translate like how I was able to interpret it. And it was, it's not about what you do in your life, but it's about who you are when you're doing it and the
yes,
energetics that you're in when you do it, because that's the universe speaks in the principle of vibration.
right.
It doesn't, all of these little details become irrelevant, but it's like, am I moving from this space of being rooted with God, rooted in truth? And if I'm not sure, it's really in my best interest to take a step back and say, well, why am I putting on makeup right now? Am I really doing it to just like enhance my beauty and to be creative and express this embodied archetype in myself that's wanting to emerge? Or am I doing it to cover up? Am I
Mhm.
doing it because I feel ashamed of myself? And I'm not going to sit here and lie to myself. I'm going to be honest and say, you know what? I'm in this space of feeling insecure. Okay, well, what's going to be the best move for me to make then to overcome that insecurity truly and like really nourish that part of me that's needing love right now?
Mhm.
Or let's say I'm out at a gathering and I see a man that I'm really attracted to, and I'm, like wanting his attention and his affection, and I'm feeling a pulse to approach because I'm feeling like he might not be, giving me the energy that I want. But it's like, well, what if instead of, before I do that approach, nothing wrong with approaching a man, but it's like, where am I coming from in that? Like, am I feeling like actually what I want is my own presence and my own energy and my own attention? And then when I give that to myself, maybe I don't even feel an attraction anymore to that other person. Or maybe my
Yes,
energy becomes so
exactly.
whole and magnetic that all of a sudden I turn around and they're walking up to me and saying, hey, what's up? I've had that
Hmm.
happen so many times actually. Or
Wow.
getting on a stage before one of my shows, and it's like, am I doing this to parade around like a little like clown and be like, look at me, and like I'm so good at, I'm a little pop star, I'm dancing and singing? Or is it like, I'm here to be seen and witnessed in my vulnerability, and to really like stay in my prayer, stay in my channel, stay connected to the most high, and whatever comes through comes through. And like, it's not about that, like how I'm being externally perceived. And sometimes it's ultimately just holding space for all of that. Like, yes,
Hmm.
I'm insecure and I want to express this archetype. Like, yes, I want attention from the masculine because I'm a woman, of course, and I want to give myself that fullness. Like, yes, I do. All of us want to be seen and witnessed in our expression. That's just a part of being an artist. That's a part of being a woman. And then holding space for all of that, but setting the intention to move in the direction of that which is going to facilitate like true wholesome embodiment and
Mm.
true wholesome energetics within ourselves and in the collective, because again, we set the tone for how we're going to be loved and related to.
Yeah, really reflecting on where it's coming from, why we're doing it.
Yeah.
And it's so important because I truly feel that the energy that we are in and that we're coming from when we are creating or we're sharing something or we are opening a space of relation with another person, like the energy that we're embodying in that time is like that's the foundation for it, you know? So if you're coming
Facts.
into a relationship insecure or you are,
Right.
doing something from a place of needing validation, it's like it's I don't know, it's like that unquenchable thirst. It's always gonna be
Totally.
there, you know? So we have to be
Totally.
really solid in that foundation in ourselves, validating ourselves, like you said, being whole and having self-respect,
Yes.
And because I oftentimes feel too that when we are seeking externally, it's like a lack of self-love and self-respect. And when we really respect and love ourselves, then we get to be like, oh, is this actually something I choose to do, like from this space of really
Mhm.
loving myself, or is this coming from a space of needing love externally? So yeah,
Totally.
the energy that
Totally.
or the space, that we're approaching these things with is so important because we're just creating more of the same.
Yeah. And I really want to bring in this piece that's coming in based on what you just shared there is like compassion, just so
Mm.
much compassion, because I think sometimes there can be and even an increase in the lack of self-love or in the judgment of ourselves when that awareness arises of like, oh, I'm in this
Mm.
space of not being able to uphold my boundaries because I don't love myself enough, like, and then it just can spiral more into, well, oh, I'm weak for that, or why can't I just love myself? But like really bringing in this frequency of like being able to hold that part of ourself with so much compassion. And then again, I'm going to bring in this piece of drawing strength from creator and realizing like I don't know how to love myself fully yet as a human being,
Mm.
but creator, the ultimate source of unconditional love, does know how.
Mhm.
And if I can attune to that instead of trying to force and lacerate my human into this role of loving me in the way that only creator can, like what if I just bring that energy in, and I ask to love myself, or not even love, just to feel. I'm saying, hey, creator, I cannot feel love for myself in this moment in my humanness, but like bring your love, like help me to feel your love for me. And when I
Mm.
do that, there's such a beautiful peace that washes over me in those moments, because there are some times where I just can't give it to myself, man, because I'm so in the Maya, I'm so in that human. But so that's when we call in creator, and then there's again where that merging happens. And and then when we allow the love of creator in, and that fully saturates our cells, then we're able to really like bring the human online into that. I found, and yeah, it's just been the strongest prayer for my life in these last few months, to really like love myself with the heart of God, and love humanity with the heart of God, and to see myself with the eyes of God, and realizing that I'm having a huge rebirth happen like of my body, and to know myself, with the mind of God, and like think the thoughts of God, speak the word of God, just really surrendering myself so fully over to creator to use me and fill me, because I'm so tired of psychically attacking myself and not being able to see myself in my beauty, or judging my brothers and my sisters that I know. And the transformation has just been immaculate. I mean, my ability to experience this world in a way of just pure joy and gratitude and utter awe for all these aspects of our humanity that I used to not be able to stomach.
Mm.
Now it's like really more and more just this cosmic play, this lila, this big, epic exhibition of just debauchery and beauty and creation and all the things, that we are as humans. And yeah, I encourage that prayer for people's lives who are having, I've struggled with self-love for a long time, but I think that's because I was so confused about what the self was. And I felt that the self was this
Mm.
separate individual that was needing to take on all this responsibility, which, yes, we do have to take on responsibility for our lives, but that responsibility, the power of being able to uphold that righteousness, and our kuleana and our responsibility, like that has to come, that strength comes from God. And so just constantly bringing those two things together, and not thinking that it falls all on our shoulders, or that God is going to do it for us either. We're in a co-creatorship here. We're in a back and forth, a constant state of receiving and giving in that way with God.
Mm. I
Yeah.
feel like you just came full circle to what we were speaking about before, like the balance of the masculine and feminine and how it's
Mm.
expressed, and just even bringing that into our relationship with God, like you just said, like about receiving the energy, giving the energy, channeling it in that way. That's so beautiful.
Totally. And actually, something that's coming in now, is it okay if I kind of tangent into?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, we've, in a lot of our conversations that we've had, in our expressions, just from our devotional heart of the feminine, and so much of what we've navigated in relationship, I feel like, yeah, there's been this desire that we've continued to express for the masculine to rise, in its sacred responsibility, and like how it can take better care for the heart of the feminine. And also, I know that there's been moments where both of us haven't felt fully met in that, and the masculine's ability to play that role. And I just want to speak that it is such a great responsibility that the masculine has to hold the heart of the feminine, and
Mm.
that can be an extremely terrifying experience for the masculine, especially if the masculine doesn't trust itself to hold, if it doesn't feel strong enough to hold, if it doesn't feel anchored enough to hold that, or if it hasn't been able to in the past, and it's going to bring its past into the present capacity. And I just really want to, again, encourage this prayer for the masculine to call on this Christic consciousness, this energy of creator, to call on the strength of God to strengthen you to be able to do that, to be able to show up in your life in the ways that you need and are being called into. I really feel at this time on the planet, the masculine is being called into these roles of protector and providership, not only for themselves, but in their family, but their entire communities, and accumulating these resources and redistributing these resources in a good way and wielding them. But they're coming up with so much resistance and so many blocks. And they're having these, true desires of the masculine surface to be in devotional union with the feminine in a good way, and to uphold these massive missions that are usually very multidimensional, like bringing music for the new earth and building homesteads and building up the garden, and then holding the heart of the infinite expression of the feminine, and dealing with their, healing their father's lineage, like healing their bloodline, their codependency stuff with their mom, like, and then just, trying to keep their head above water and keep themselves afloat. And again, like, I have such an amazing amount of compassion for the masculine, not only for what I've had to cultivate within myself, but just the relationships that I've had and just the heart that I've had for these men, and seeing how hard it's been for them really, to rise in this way. And so there's just such this fire in me to speak to this right now, that like, you are not alone, and you don't have to do this alone. And like, there is a loving God that is a giver of infinite energy, that if you choose to connect to, like, you can receive that, and it will just pump you with so much chi, with so much life force, that you can handle all of these things. And that also, like, we are here to support you as the feminine, and we are here to understand that you're doing your best and hold space for your humanness and have compassion. But at the same time, just, yeah, calling that in for the masculine, that they feel the support of creator. And I'm not just speaking to male-bodied persons. Again, it's like that masculine in all of us that's here to provide the life of our
Mhm.
wildest dreams for us, and hold these
Mm.
containers for us. So yeah, that was just
Mm.
coming in hot.
I think it's really beautiful that you're sharing this prayer for the brothers, because I think it's really important that we do have so much compassion and awareness for the way each gender has been distorted within their own
Mhm.
perception of themselves and how to use their energy. And yeah, I mean, gosh, just like the siphoning of the Shakti through like the
Mhm.
distortions of like body image, and expecting us to all look a certain way or express ourselves in a certain way, or the expectation of women to be gentle and kind and like pushovers. And it's like there are so many expressions of the goddess, like we are all of it.
Yeah.
And also like the siphoning of the masculine energy through the porn industry, through lust, through distraction, so many different things. So yeah, just praying for each other and helping each other get back on the path when we fall off with compassion, speaking the radical truths, and also, yeah, having so much love in our hearts. Yeah.
Amen, my girl. Yeah, amen to all that. And oh, I'm just like hearing again and again, like, we are not meant to do that on our own. Like,
Mhm.
I really feel like we're
We all
having
need each other.
this collective shift right now that's become making it so apparent that we really need to be able to embrace right now, like, the love of God, but also just the support from our community and the support from each other, and receiving that support from, yeah, the sisters, from the brothers, from the elders, from the medicine keepers, like from the elements, from our prayer, from this time with ourselves at our altars, and draw strength from these truly, like, the waters, the upwell, this bubbling flow of primordial life force that has the answers, that has the codes, and that can assist us in this rewiring of the collective body and of our physical bodies and of our minds and our thoughts to be in a space of reclamation with our birthright of
Mm.
true love and unconditional love and real bliss. We're on our way. We're on our way. We have so many tools and so much support. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and I just want to highlight like the support that we have from the earth and that
Yeah.
not only the earth but the elements like the fire, the water, earth, the air, all of these things that also exist within us and can help us balance certain aspects of ourselves and also understanding ourselves more deeply just through spending time with them, connecting with these
Mhm.
things. And the earth is just such a pure consciousness without all these sorts of distortions and conditioning. And so it can be just such a pure reflection of where we are out of balance and how to, release those
Mhm.
things that were never ours in the first place. So I feel like, yeah, getting back to the earth is such a key piece of all of this too.
Amen. And yeah, what you're speaking to, and also what you spoke to before this as well, has been sparking more fire around this concept of like, what is the true feminine?
Hmm.
And for me, like, I've gone to the earth as my teacher of true femininity,
Hmm.
and really been in that space of connecting with her to show me, because when I was young and looking around at this world and seeing so much of this distortion, I felt like I just couldn't trust what was being taught to me or projected to me. There was a level of discernment even then, and intuition even then, that I needed to go really deep within my own heart, or really deep into this source tap, to uncover what is true femininity for me. And you spoke to that there's a lot of like ideas circling in the collective right now around what that is, or men have a lot of ideas about that, and then a lot of projections around that. And I'd even be curious to hear from you, because I feel like you and I hold such different archetypes of the feminine, but we have such an immense resonance with one another. And I think that
Hmm.
it's because we do hold these like keynote threads of true femininity that we share, and that allow us to
Mm.
feel this incredible amount of safety and trust with one another, and connection with one another. And yeah, I feel like you've been somebody that I've really looked to as just someone that's giving me hope that yes, the true
Mm.
feminine is here. Like, she is incarnate on the planet, and there are women that I can find resonance with, and be in counsel with, and be inspired by, and co-create with, and know where their energy is going to and where it's coming from, and like fully trust that. And that's such like a just felt in the body sort of thing. I mean, and I know
Hmm.
we've talked about this too. For me, one of the ways that I know that I'm interfacing with the true feminine is just how like safe and calm my nervous system feels around a person.
Right.
And when I'm around somebody that might be projecting themselves to be, or preaching themselves to be this you know expression of the true divine feminine, but it's like I can feel my system being hijacked, and I can just feel the false feminine in the grid. Like, I can feel her in the field, I can feel it in the matrix, and I ultimately just don't feel fully safe in those moments. And I have to do a lot of work to like bring myself back to center. But with you, there's always been like this feeling of just ease of being, and calm and centeredness. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm curious if you'd want to explore a little bit more, go more into that, of like how you've uncovered your femininity, or what that means for you, or what you look for, or how that expresses itself, or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That means a lot to me.
Mm.
And it's interesting because you're using the word like true feminine. And I also want to give just another way to look at this is I want to say there's like the shadow feminine aspects and then the more
Mm,
like whole and healed. And it's like
mm,
we all have both parts, but it's like which ones do we choose to let run the show and which ones are we choosing to embody? And
mm,
and we have to integrate those lower energies to be able to step into this higher way of walking and living as women. And
mm,
I think that's such
mhm.
a journey too. So to not judge ourselves when it comes up, but
Or others.
or others, yeah.
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 And I love that you were sharing that we do have different archetypes, but we do also meet in this really beautiful place. And I feel like it's this place of like devotion to spirit, to God, to the divine, whatever you want to call it.
Mm,
And this level of humility, of knowing ourselves as vessels for the divine and knowing that our job as women is to be a channel for that energy, whatever it looks like, but in a way that is supportive to ourselves and to other people.
mhm.
And just coming back to
Mm,
that piece of validation, just being able to be that channel without needing the validation, without needing the attention, but really doing it from a place of prayer and service. And,
mhm.
not to say that like the divine feminine, because I have a Leo moon, you also have a lot of Leo in your chart, isn't like big and out there and can receive a lot of attention and love externally, but it's also just that place of knowing it's not all coming from ourselves. And I think you've spoken a lot about that today. So I feel like that's something that you and I are both really aware of and anchored into within our creative processes and the way we
Mm,
show up in the world. And I think too, there's such safety between us because we've kind of extracted these energies of jealousy and competition or this archetype of, yeah, like the shadow feminine, like needing it to be like all about herself or like all of the
mhm,
flattery, but really like being in that co-creative space and like honoring each other as women and channels and seeing the light in each other and celebrating that,
mhm.
rather than feeling threatened by it. Feels like such a key piece too.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. And I think what's coming into it to just add to everything you're saying and speaking to this, yeah, element of safety and these elements of humility. And another keynote that I just want to drop in to add to this mix is like permission to be human and
Yes.
to
Yeah.
be messy and to be imperfect
Mhm.
and like none of us are imperfect in the eyes of God, but like from these standards and these programs that we've, all adopted and that we're weeding out right now as a collective, but just this constant posturing of the feminine that I feel like we've been fed and, like
Mm,
imposturing as well.
yes.
And that when something feels the need to constantly fit itself into this mold, that there's a level of like inauthenticity.
Mm,
And it is like for me, the true feminine is literally everything. She is not just, the soft, gentle rain that drops dew on the leaf,
right.
It's also Pele. It's the freaking
Fire.
crazy eruptive volcano. It's the thunder booming and the strikes of lightning and just these crazy massive tidal waves. But and it's the gentle flickering of sunlight in the morning and the cool breeze and the butterfly. So all these things, full spectrum, and to just not be stuck in any one way of being in that. And then also, yeah, just not having to posture ourselves and certain things that feel really ultimately like boxed and plastic and limiting to our being because uh, God is too unique.
Right.
She's we, they, whatever you want to associate with that, like is too massive. And to really open up the eye of like the beauty way to really see and experience the beauty. I've always used this as a frame of reference for myself as it's like, why, when I look at myself, do I expect to see always this like perfect symmetry, these perfect lines? Like when I go into the forest, when I've gone into forest, that are, you know, man-made and propagated so that it's just like line after line, tree after tree after tree. It feels like militant in there. Like I don't feel as inspired or as at home or as like nourished as when I'm in just like the jungle where the vines are all sorts of
Mm,
scraggly and trees are bent and nothing really makes sense. But and that's why it's so rich and beautiful and biodiverse. And I think that there's just been such an unfortunate attack on the feminine in that way of trying to box and label us in one type of way. And that for me again has just been this huge draw and pull that I've had to liberating like myself, even to the points of, yeah, actually now that I'm even, you know, speaking to this, it's like those times where I felt like I was like deeply embodying my masculine, it's like maybe those were just other parts of the feminine that were just
mm,
mislabeled, you know, and like put away into a different category or a different box.
mhm.
But it's like, yeah, there's no cap on this, the reclamation of the infinite being. And knowing that the container is not to like put us in this Barbie box, but to just hold us in this reverence and this safety of oneness with God, and then everything else is, can really be on limits, you know.
Yeah, you're so right. And I like what you just said at the end about that being other aspects of the feminine that you were exploring, because I also feel that within the polarity work and conversations, um, we can also start to put each other as men and women in a box and say, okay,
Mm.
like the feminine has to be this way and the masculine has to be this way. And I think it's just really about like finding that balance, and
Yeah,
self-love through whatever energies are coming through us that we're expressing.
definitely. I've been in relation with this man recently, and we've been navigating, you know, he's very integrated in both his masculine and feminine and me and mine. And we're just trying to find our way in this new age and in this chapter of our lives. And something that has been surfacing for us is like, instead of using these principles of polarity as a guide map, or these roles that have traditionally been played, like using just this, the present moment ultimately, of like
Mhm.
who is more resourced in this moment, who is most resourced for what in this moment. And realizing, you know, that if he's been at work all day for 8 hours and I've been at home and I got to go on a run and do my meditations and really like be in my spirit walk and just feel really nourished, be out in nature, whatever. And then he comes home from work. Like it's not really fair for me in that moment to expect him to make dinner and, you know, provide that for me or something. And it's like, I'm resourced. Like I want to,
Mhm.
from that place of overflow, show up and take good care of him and like help him, bring him into all this good energy, this good mana that I've cultivated. Like it's not just for me, it's to be able to share with my beloved and like with other members of my tribe. And we cultivate this space of overflow to be able to share that. And that is really one of the another keynotes of like in my exploration and asking and building communion with the true feminine. She's like, I'm here to serve. Like
Mhm.
there's so
Mhm.
much in the collective grid right now too, of women being like, well, I deserve this, like you give me this and that, like I'm worthy. And that's a big yes. Yes, you are, sis, you are worthy. But it's like, also I just think there's something to be wary of in that, of like, what if we put a little bit more energy and attention towards like, what can I give, how can I give, how can I serve
Yeah.
everything that I'm given, like where can I, and not in this martyrdom way of like I'm just constantly, you know, I can't have anything nice for myself or ever just like be in this energy and just be in this space of overflow just with myself. Like that's majorly important. But to just, you know, set our sights a little bit more on like, what can I give with what I have, and
Mhm.
knowing that that taps us into this unique circuit of abundance, and also into a totally different type of relationship, because the two people are showing up in relationship with what can I get, you know, the man being like, what can I get from this woman sexually,
Right.
or what can I get from how attractive she is, or what sort of status can I get from being with this woman, and then the woman looking at like, what kind of resources can this man give to me, you know, how much money am I going to get, like what does he look, so these things that are just so vapid, and ultimately just, they never, it's never enough, it's never enough. But if
Mhm.
you're looking at it
Mhm.
as like, how can I be of service to this person, and how can I serve myself so that I can actually truly and authentically be of service to this person, And in that space of coming together and complete overflow, not only are we going to be able to spill back over into each other's cups, but there's just going to be this rich pool of life that nourishes all of those around us in this garden and in this kingdom that we're reclaiming and building, with these right relations. And so, yeah, just speaking to that a little bit of like, to be in that devotional heart and to be in that way of true service, and move from this place of like, how can I be so inner resourced, so that, not so that I can just get off on all this magnetic energy, but like so that I can give back.
Hmm.
Ultimately, my goal, give back. Like, why do we want these resources? Like, why do I want money? It's like so that I can invest into something that's going to give back
Hmm.
to my community, to my beloved, to myself, to the land, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I really think that that needs to be the foundation for relationships these days is our
Mm-hmm.
connection to God and how can we show up and serve and support each other rather than,
Mm-hmm.
what can we get from each other? And I think that when we fall out of that, at least from my personal experience, and we are coming from a place of, what can I get from you or, what can you give me? I think that's when relationships end up ending because, we're
Mm,
not resourced within ourselves. We're looking for someone else to take care of it. Or, we're not giving ourselves in the way that we could be to the other person, or we're not even receiving. And I think that that's what really, yeah, disconnects relationships. And then God comes in and, I think a lot of the reasons people break up nowadays, like what I'm trying to say is that I think it's basically because Spirit is wanting them to reconnect to God within themselves. And
mm,
because like it's all been put on this other person, you know what I mean? Like siphoning that energy from
totally.
them rather than from source itself. Yeah.
Totally. Yes, and just bringing awareness to that of like, if we're able to just catch that in the relationship, and again just be tracking within ourselves, like where am I not moving from a place of wholeness? And for women, I think that
Right.
shows up in just like wanting this man's attention so badly all the time. And when I see myself in that, being like, okay, whoa, reorient, like recenter, let's just come back right here, be with myself. Like, it's not
Mhm.
about this person at all right now. And if we continue to come back into that space of wholeness, then we don't have to break up. And we can just say, or if a man is sourcing all this love and compassion and nourishment from the feminine, and he feels like, you know, when he goes into his own space, like he can't keep up with that
Mhm.
frequency of self-care and nourishing his own self, and that he's codependent on us, like, yeah, the vibration just can't even sustain. So we'll naturally break up. But if we can be like, no, I'm going to use this as motivation and continued inspiration to like love myself better, I think that that's okay. As long as we're loving ourselves better, it's okay if it comes from that person, but not if it's like the love itself is coming only from that person, or that you're
Mhm.
only able to do that when you're with them. I think that that can be, yeah, just the epitome of codependence.
For
So,
sure.
but yeah,
Yeah.
I think realizing that, I'm noticing that that's sometimes a resistance coming up from the masculine right now in relation, is like this over projecting fear of like ways that they've been in the past, of that, of not being able to directly source their own inner feminine. And so there's such a fear sometimes, I think, from the masculine of like drawing that from the feminine, but then at the same time that fear, then they're resisting the love entirely and being like, no, I can't get that from you. And then there's no interdependence that's happening, right? Because it's like, no, you're allowed to draw inspiration from me. I can't be your sole epicenter of inspiration to love yourself and to take care of yourself, but like we are allowed to draw strength from one another. I cannot be the only thing you draw strength from. Like, you better
Hmm.
be drawing strength from yourself, from the elements, from the earth, from your work. Like, noted that it's, sustainable and nourishing and an aligned dharmic calling
Hmm.
from, from our communities, from these sangha, sits with the sangha, like from the elders. And so if I'm a part of that, like, let me be a part of that. Don't push me away. But
Hmm.
also, I cannot be your whole world, with that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's key in relationship too. Not trying to fill every single role or meet, every single need just within the relationship, but having that support system, having community, having like the spiritual practices that fill you up, and get you feeling connected to
Totally.
yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I'm feeling that it's almost time to wrap things up. So do you have anything else to share, Shakina?
Mm. Yeah, there's just, one thing coming in, and it's just, I just hear Creator saying, like, it's time to let love in. It's
Hmm.
time to let love in. It's time to let love in, like fully let me in. Um, yeah, making time for loving. I don't know why that's
Hmm.
just coming in like that, but really uh, making the aim and the goal to love one another, in a good way, and not being so hyper fixated on the self or so hyper fixated on the individual, knowing that that just perpetuates these states of separation and fragment. And that
Hmm.
it's like, I think a lot of us, again, we've ridden this epic backlash of codependency into this space of independence. And I think also the masculine just collectively has been fed this story of like their independence being the root of, their conquest and of their hero's journey. And it's just like, I hear the feminine being like, soften into me. And I also hear the masculine to the feminine being like, trust that I can hold you. And
Hmm.
like for us to really allow ourselves to relax a little bit more and realize that there are these new versions of ourselves that have emerged in this season of loving ourselves, and of it, yeah, just reconnecting with God, and trusting that if both parties are in that we're safe to be in relation together, and that it really is safe to be in relationship, and that especially if the relationship is held in the divine. And one other thing to speak is just, I had a big like tidal wave of resistance come up, and a lot of fear in this current like merging that I'm experiencing with this person. And as I was moving through that, I just heard my spirit saying so strongly, like, nothing can come in the way of true love, Shakina. Like, nothing can come in the way of true love. And I think sometimes we create more of these disturbances in love, more of these like projections of lust, with the masculine that can feel really dangerous to our relationships, or more of these manipulative energies within ourselves as the feminine, these like just very sabotaging energies that can come into relationship because of this fear. We create more fear from our own fear, but just that there really is no fear in love, that
Hmm.
there is no room for fear in perfect love, and that perfect love truly casts out all fear. And like, it's one thing to say that, but to just like really feel that if love is on God and love is held by God and in God, it is impenetrable and it can overcome all things, and that there is a strength that can come from God, and that can come from true love, and like being in this union with the self and having that manifest itself, in right relation. And that it's just time for that. Like, I'm just hearing so clearly that it's just time for that, for us to drop our egos even more and surrender our separate identity and just allow ourselves to like receive love so that we can give more love.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being here today. Is there a way we can connect with you on social media? What's your
Thanks,
Instagram
Danny.
handle?
Yeah, my Instagram is at Shekina Sounds, SheKinaSounds. And then in my bio there's a link to a link tree. You're able to click the link to buy my book on Amazon, if you want to go more into this with me there. And then I also have a link to some music that I have.
Oh yeah,
Um,
Shakina has incredible
on
music. I'll link that here too.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys can also find everything in the description of this podcast.
Mm.
All right. Thank you so much, Shakina.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Danny. I really appreciate you.
Oh, love you so much.
Love you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Embracing the Mystery, and I hope you enjoyed. To stay connected, you can follow me on Instagram at Danny M. Rem, or follow and like my Facebook business page, Danny Rem Embracing the Mystery, where I share weekly live channelings, guided meditations, and content to help empower you to live an authentic and embodied soul-led life. You can also find the links to this information in the bio of this episode. Thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoyed.